The M3 Podcast, marketing knowledge to help you succeed. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the M3 Podcast. We have a very special guest on with us this week, Elizabeth Hill. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
And we have Dalton from the MMG side over here.
What up?
And you guys know each other, so I'm the odd man out today.
We do know each other.
We do know each other. We go way back.
All right, let's start. How do you guys know each other?
You want to tell her, or do you want me to?
You can share.
Okay. So I'm very good friends with Elizabeth's son, Steven. I think Steven and I probably met in 7th grade, which would have been 2007-ish
Yep.
for us. So I have
heavy on the ish.
Yeah, I think it was 07, probably 07. So I used to go over to Steven's house all the time, and they lived in Wrist Lake at the time. And that was really close to where I lived, so we would hang out, have sleepovers. And I used to work on the farm that Elizabeth owns that we'll probably get into. Yep. So
very cool. And then it comes full circle around. Steven hits me up on Instagram. He's like, hey, my mom needs to be on here. And he's like, and so here we are.
Here we are. Yep. Steven's always pimping me out. That's not the right word, but he's always like, yeah, he does that with referring clients to me. My mom can help you out. And then he gives them my cell phone number. I'm like, stop doing that. I don't work off my cell phone. Give them my office number.
And then some random person calls you.
Yeah,
like,
and then somebody will call and go,
hey,
Steven said you could help me out. I'm like, oh my gosh.
So I know that's when I'm like, hey, can I just get the cell number? So.
Yeah, right. I know. I always know it's one of the kids. If somebody's calling me on my cell, I'm like, it's one of the kids. One of my children has given out my cell phone number.
Yeah, I feel like he's doing pretty good referring business, though.
He is very good at referring business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is it all that you do?
All that I do?
All that you do.
So I have a law practice, and I have a horse sporting facility, and I'm the mother to 5 children.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Which, out of the 2 businesses, which started first?
Law.
Law? Mm-hmm. And where did you go to law school at?
I went to law school at UMKC and graduated in, I don't even know if I want to tell you when I graduated. Then you'll do the math and know how old I am. I graduated in 87 from UMKC, and then I've been an attorney ever since, so over 35 years. I've been practicing law. Yeah.
So I don't know a whole lot about law, so
Well, that's good. That means you've never been in trouble.
That's true. I went to court one time for insurance, not having it in my truck when I got pulled over at 16. And I went to the courthouse in shorts with a T-shirt with Baby Carlos on the front. And I walk in, I was like, uh-oh. And my dad was just like, yeah, hit the courthouse and show them your insurance. And I went in and I go in a room and every single person's in there dressed up. I'm wearing a white T-shirt, has Baby Carlos on the front, and they're like, the judge was she was amazing. She goes, you haven't been here before, have you? Mm-hmm. I'm hearing court case, case after case, and this person's caught with this much, this many pounds of drugs, and I'm like, I don't feel like I'm supposed to be in here.
Am I in the right courtroom?
Yeah, she comes in, she's like, do you have your insurance? And I was like, she goes, I hope you just never end up being here.
She's like, you can go now.
You can go.
This might be a stupid question. Who the hell is Baby Carlos?
You know what Hangover? You know when they got that baby?
The baby?
Yeah, and he had that deal strapped on.
Yeah.
And they carried that baby around. That was Baby Carlos.
Oh, and Hangover 2.
Yep. So it was like a graphic tee.
Mm-hmm.
And
what a shirt.
Yeah, it was.
What a proud moment.
It was.
Have you ever seen attire like that in the courtroom?
No, because there's signs that say no shorts, no tank tops, no flip-flops.
I wasn't wearing flip-flops or a tank top.
But shorts.
Shorts. So I only missed really.
There's usually signs that talk about attire before you walk in.
So I think I got a 66%.
But it might have been a little late when you were already there dressed that way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so that was my only run-in with being at a courthouse in general. So I'm assuming you have spent much more time in a courtroom.
I have.
So what was the reason for getting into law? What made you want to do that?
So, interesting story. I started out in marketing and retail and worked for Hartsfeld's, which isn't in Kansas City anymore, but it was a high-end women's clothing store as a buyer. And then they closed. Then Macy's Midwest hired most of the buyers from that store to come work for them across the street downtown. And then that division closed, and I could have gone to Phoenix or Atlanta, I think. And I was like, I don't really want to move from Kansas City. And then I thought, I don't really want to move from Kansas City. I want to get out of retail. Because in like a 4-year span, the 2 places that I worked closed. And I thought, this is not an area I want to be in. And so then I decided to go to law school. I don't know why, because nobody in my family was an attorney. And most people in my family didn't even go to college. I'm going to go to law school. I don't know what I was thinking, but so I did.
It looks like it's panned out great.
It has panned out great.
So there's a lot of different forms of law.
Yes.
So what law do you practice?
So I practice family law.
Okay.
And that covers a lot of areas. The ones that you would know the most about would be adoption work, paternity, when you're not married and you're having children together, divorces, prenuptial agreements, guardianships. That kind of covers all of family law. I originally was a litigator, and now I do mostly mediation, collaborative divorce work.
So what made you want to do that form of law?
Well, actually, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to law school. I didn't really actually know why I was there, to be honest. I went and I signed, I applied and I got in, and I didn't have a lot of guidance because my family really didn't go to college. I didn't have anybody to I didn't have an aunt or an uncle or an older brother or somebody that was in law school. So I was kind of navigating on my own, and I thought, well, I'm just going to go. And then when I got there, everybody there is really smart, like everybody. And I went from feeling like I was pretty smart, knew what I was doing, to why am I here and what am I doing? And that's how I felt probably my first year of law school. It's your hardest. And then the second year, you can start choosing electives like you can in college. You have a course subjects you have to take, but then you can choose. And I chose a couple of family law classes. And I loved my professor. In fact, she just retired last year. And I loved her, and she got me really interested in family law. And so every chance I had to take an elective, I took something in juvenile law or family law or something like that. So when I got out, I had an interest in that. And then the first job I had in this law firm, they came in like the second week I was there and said, how do you feel about family law? I was like, well, I like family law. I took a lot of courses. And they said, okay, you're going to do the family law for the firm. And I went, okay. And there you go. And that's how I got into it. And then once I started working in that area, I absolutely loved it because I had my own cases. I had my own clients. Pre-COVID, years ago, you went to court all the time. And I loved being in the courtroom. And that was kind of what I wanted to do. And I felt like I was having an impact on families, and it's turned out to be an amazing career for me.
Sounds like it. How much, when I said I've been in a courtroom once, physically, I watch a lot of court TV shows.
Yeah, that's not court.
So that's what I was going to ask. Like,
that is not
that's
court.
reality
so
TV.
there's probably a lot of people, like, I'm not talking like the Judge Judy's, but like,
Yeah.
I watch Bull, and how different is like the court processes and everything like that? Because there's probably people listening to this that, having spent as much time in court as I have.
Right.
So, what?
So, the reality shows are definitely not court. The reality courtroom shows are really not court at all.
I thought those were a little over
you
the
don't
top.
talk over each other. You're not disrespectful to anybody else that's you should not be disrespectful to anybody else that's in the courtroom. You're definitely not disrespectful to the judge. But some of those shows, the ones I think that are more criminal-based are somewhat of reflection of court. As far as procedurally what happens in court, they probably are. But
So would you say, does family stuff get really crazy with like cases and things like that you have, or does it stay pretty?
So when I was a litigator, clients would come in and they would tell me what was going on, and I just thought, you can't make this shit up. Like, really? This is what's happening? And I just go, wow. And so we call those the Jerry Springer shows, the Jerry Springer cases.
Nice.
And I don't do Jerry Springer anymore. But when you're a new lawyer, you're taking pretty much everything that walks in the door because you're trying to build your clientele, you want business, you're trying to bill your hours, meet your quotas for revenue. And so you take a lot of different things. But over time, just like any business that you're in, as you become more successful, you can become more selective about the type of cases that you take. And even the type of areas that you want to be in. And so over time, I've become very selective about my clientele and what I do and hours I work, that type of thing.
So I'm ignorant to the terms. What's the difference between litigation and mediation? Like, what is...
So litigation is an adversarial vibe to the case. Both parties have lawyers. There's depositions. There's interrogatories. There's document productions. There's subpoenas.
So this is probably what most people think about when they think of
That
court.
is what they think about. Because up until the last probably 15 years, that was your only choice, was a litigated case or a contested case. Now, most of those settle, like 90% of those cases settle, but not until you've done all this work, depositions and document productions and all that kind of thing, and sometimes actually in the courthouse, and you're finally settling your case. That's a litigated case. Mediation is where couples say, our marriage is not working. We've been through therapy. We've done all these things. We want to divorce, but we want to do it in a respectful way. We want to be thoughtful. We've got kids. We know we're still going to be together forever because we have children. And we just want to sit down and figure it out. And that's what I do now. So couples come in, or now we do it on Zoom. Pre-COVID, now we do everything post-COVID on Zoom too, for the most part. But then I just sit down with couples and we figure it out. And it's thoughtful, it's kind.
So it's
respectful.
you, the couple, maybe they're another lawyer, and you're just...
Sometimes
it's like
there's
a
no lawyers. Sometimes there's no lawyers. It's just the couple and me. Because I am a lawyer, but I don't give legal advice as a mediator. But yeah, they'll just come in and sit down, or we'll do a Zoom call and we gather all their financial information so I know what it is we're talking about. We navigate through how to distribute that between them in an equitable way. And then we talk about the kids. If they've got kids, we talk about the kids and what they want to do for parenting time and how that's going to look. And then I draft all their paperwork for them and I help them get through the court system.
It sounds a lot less stressful than litigation.
Way less stressful for me and for them.
Sure.
And for them.
Does it ever happen where that starts and then ends up going back to litigation side?
Occasionally. Not very often. Usually that happens when one party, one spouse really wants mediation, the other one is on the fence about it, and then they get in and then they're like, I don't want to do it this way because I feel like it's not going in the direction they wanted or something. And usually when that starts happening, I encourage them to consult with an attorney, because a lot of times they want to get out of the process because they think it's not aligning the way they want, but the way they want it to align sometimes isn't realistic. And so I'm like, why don't you go consult with an attorney and talk about where you are in this conversation? Because I feel like most of the time that lawyer's going to say, no, you're on track, and this is kind of where you'll end up. So go back to mediation and get it done.
Yeah. That's where I feel like probably my parents got divorced when I was young, and it was one of those things that if you put them in a room, they'd probably fist fight. It took like 4 years of court to get it all done, but it was just like that was something that the process of what I saw, and now it's like people
don't
just
want
like, no, now people are like, hey, I talked to so and so, we're just like divvying it up and we're good to roll.
Yep.
But I feel like there's a lot of different avenues that can take.
That's got to be hard on the kids too.
It can be hard on the kids. I mean, so now mediation's an option. In most counties, it's a requirement that you go to at least a couple hours of mediation before you can get a court date for those that are in that contested track. So there's a lot more support from the court too for alternative dispute, because the courts don't want those cases either, really. They really want parents to figure out how they want to parent their kids and co-parent and make decisions, and it's not really for the judges to decide, but they'll say, look, if you can't figure it out, I'm happy to make those decisions for you. But they're usually not what the couple wanted, but at that point it's too late because they put it in the hands of the judge.
So practicing law, you have a firm now.
I do.
And where's your firm located?
In Overland Park.
In Overland Park?
Yep. I'm pretty much Johnson County, Kansas. That's where most of my clientele is now.
Gotcha.
I started out on the Missouri side because that's where I went to law school, and I got my bar license in Missouri first, and then I took the Kansas bar second, and started out on the Missouri side, and then about, I don't know, 8 or 10 years in, I moved my office just on the other side of state line, and then I was in Kansas, and then I started getting more Kansas cases. What I found was, which is interesting, if you were in Missouri, Missouri folks would go to Missouri office or a Kansas office, but if it was a Kansas case, they were not coming over to Missouri Missouri office. Isn't that crazy? True, but crazy.
Yeah.
It's same with marketing.
Is it?
Yeah, when we were at Northland, somebody from Johnson County, if you told them you were from Liberty,
They go where?
you might as well have been at the Iowa border.
Right.
And
I hear you.
Now we're in the River Market. They're like, oh, yeah, we'll drive right over there. I'm like,
I know. Isn't it crazy? Location is just so crazy.
Yeah.
So I moved over literally across the state line. I was at 92nd and War Parkway, and I moved over to 80th and State Line on the Kansas side. And then I started getting Kansas business. And then my business just started shifting more to Kansas, less to Missouri. And then I moved over to College Boulevard. And I've been kind of in that quadrant of College and Metcalf for the last 20-some years. And now my practice is probably 85% Kansas.
okay.
So
When did you open your practice? I've known you for a long time, and I
in
don't even know this.
87 is when I started practicing. When I opened my own office was in 92.
Okay.
And I've had my own, I've
been
been
a
a
long time.
solo practitioner my whole career, except for the first few years when I first got out of law school. I worked for a couple different firms.
What do you think the biggest hurdle was, biggest obstacle to take on opening your own practice?
Fear that the phone was never going to ring, and leaving a practice and leaving a whole set of clients behind and basically starting over again. Because I had a clientele with the firm I was with, and then when I left, just like anything else, you can't take your clients with you. They have to decide to come.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They can't do a non-compete because it's a client's choice, but it is tricky when you're leaving a firm and doing something else. But it all worked out, It worked out great. It was the right decision for me at the time to go out on my own, and I have never looked back.
So in 92, you open up a new law practice.
Mm-hmm.
How did one acquire clients at that time?
So word of mouth,
Okay.
referrals from other clients, and then I had quite a few clients that did come with me that said, we hired her, not the firm.
Yeah.
We're going with her.
So just pretty much word of mouth and just letting it roll.
Yep.
I feel like that's the crazy thing about like the opportunity that we have nowadays.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, like you can open anything as long as you can get the exposure out there.
Absolutely.
And you get eyeballs on something. It's like it can blow up overnight.
Yeah. It's very different back then.
And that
Yeah.
I've talked to my dad about it. I'm like, how did you like? I don't even know how to wrap my mind around like with the tools that we have now. I'm like,
Right.
how'd you do this without
I
like,
know.
what
I
did
know.
you do? Like,
I don't know. I don't even know. When you say, what do you do? And I'm like, I don't remember. I just remember borrowing money to open my own practice. I had, Stephen's brother Joe,
I was going to
my
say,
older
yeah,
son.
that was around the time
He
your
was a
kids were
baby.
born.
He was 1. And then I opened my office in 92. And then I had Stephen in 93. So I had these 2 babies.
you
And
had all the things happening.
all that stuff happening. And that's honestly why I went out and I went on my own, because I already had my son Joe. I knew I wanted to have more children. And I just, for me, it worked better to have the flexibility of being self-employed than meeting the demands and expectation of a firm that, they have certain criteria and certain thresholds they want you to meet in your billable hours. And I just thought, I can't do, I'm not going to do that. That's not going to be my lifestyle as a mom and having
Makes
kids.
sense.
So then, what year did the farm come into play?
So the farm, this is wild and crazy. So the farm I bought in 2007.
Oh, so it wasn't that crazy long ago.
Well, it's been a minute.
It was a little
So I
17
think
years.
it had to have been brand new then when I met Steven.
Yeah, because I had moved up there. I was living north
right.
of
They were
the
trying
river.
to find new laborers at the time.
We were trying to.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
were. We
Elizabeth-
were shooting for child labor.
Yeah,
No, I'm
Hey,
kidding.
go meet some new friends. at school
Elizabeth's
so they
like,
could-
meet some 7th graders and they need to come
And they
work
need
with
to
you.
come work at the farm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I bought the farm in 2007, right before the market crashed. So I had been volunteering at this rescue that I met the couple that started it through my church. loved what they were doing. I'd grown up with horses, and it was a horse rescue. It's where I was volunteering, and I was like, I love what they're doing, but they didn't have the right infrastructure to expand the rescue and make it more than it was at the time. And so I said to this couple, I said, I love what you're doing. I want to find a place for you to operate out of. And they were like, they were leasing a place. And they were like, seriously? And I go, yeah, I do. I want to do this. And so it took me a couple years to find my property. And then when I found the property, I bought it. And then within like 6 months, there was a smaller barn that we were going to run the rescue out of. They moved the rescue in. And then the upper barn, which is where the horse boarding facility is, that was the for-profit side of the business. And about 6 months into it, they go, this is more work than we thought it was going to be. And so we don't think we really want to do the rescue anymore. And I'm thinking, I'm going, really? Okay, then. Well, we'll just regroup. So I kept the rescue and really had it going up until COVID. And it turned out to be amazing. We got a different board, and we started doing marketing about our rescue. We started getting funding and grants, and really became a pretty cool operation for many, many years. And then I had my horse boarding facility on this. That was really the for-profit that supported the property. And then when COVID started, it was hard for us to fundraise. And I don't know, the timing just seemed like it was time to just kind of wind that down. So now we don't have the rescue anymore.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I really think that the free 7th graders was the key to the whole thing.
Well, free, good child labor. You can never go wrong with that.
She's like, now my kids have grown up. I don't have all that child labor. I don't know what to do now.
I know, right?
I think it's time we wind it down.
So Stephen and all of his little football buddies, they would all come over and they would be fencing and painting, and, we'd pay them and then give them pizza and
everybody loves a good pizza party.
Dinners.
I know,
Yeah,
and
the
dinners
were
and cook out. We'd cook out and grill, and I don't know, Dalton, do you think it was fun? I mean, honestly, did you think it was a fun time?
I worked for you in high school too.
I know you did. I know. Off and on.
Yeah.
And it's been a great job. It's been a great thing for my family because I have 3 other children too. And my daughter was an equestrian, and she rode and showed and trained horses and did lessons and stuff. And then the 4 boys have always worked at the farm in some capacity through their childhood and in and out of job, between jobs. I'll go, Mom, can I come back? I work at the farm. Sure, come back. And so everybody's been on and off payroll all through the years, including a lot of my kids' friends. Yeah. In between jobs, not sure what they're doing. Even if they just come out and work for a month, I'm good with that. 2 weeks, I don't care. There's so much to do out there all the time.
How big is the farm?
It's only 10 acres, but it's in the city. It's outright. Well, one of the perimeters of my property is city limit, Kansas City. I'm obviously on the other side, Platte County rural. We're zoned agricultural, but quick trips around the corner.
It's if you're going down Berry Road, past Park Hill, and it's probably a mile past Park Hill. You take a left, it's back up in there.
We can hear the drum corps on Friday nights and the football games and everybody cheering because we're kind of behind Park Hill, but you have to wind around. Mm-hmm. And there's actually 3 barns back on that road. Crazy enough, 3 horse boarding facilities back there. Yeah. So
I think a lot of people discount the amount of work that goes into taking care of horses.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
First-hand account, I can attest.
It is.
It's a lot. It's fun. Though. It's not that. I mean, it's not horrible though.
I mean, they eat a lot and they shit a lot.
They do. They do.
You know what? My least favorite thing.
What was your least favorite thing, Dalton?
Was painting.
You hated to paint?
I'll do anything. I just hate painting.
Well, we're going to have a big paint party soon. We're going to be sure and hit you up.
I think I'm going to be out of town.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to be.
You're
going to be busy that weekend.
No, I don't mind doing the fencing, putting the fencing up, putting the hot wire up, but
painting the fence. Some of that too.
Painting the fence sucks.
Well, the thing about horses, it's like anything, any industry that has live animals, there's never a day off.
Yeah.
It's 365. Doesn't matter whether it's a holiday or not. Doesn't matter if it's 2 degrees out. Doesn't matter if there's 2 inches of ice. Mm-hmm. You have to get to the barn and feed the horses. You have to.
Yep.
So that's the thing about caring for live animals. You can't just phone it in and say, can't be there today. Let's turn on for the auto answer on the phone with the, you can't do that. You have to get there.
So out of doing, actually, let's go into the family aspect. Now we've hit
family.
You hit the law, We've hit the farm and family.
Family.
So it all started when getting your firm.
Yeah.
Correct? And then you were sharing some information before we started.
Yeah, about my other little darlings.
Yeah.
So I have 5 kids. And so Joe and Steven, brothers, that's who Dalton knows the best. And then I also have 3 children that were adopted from Russia as older children. So my younger 2 sons, Brett and Will, are biological brothers. And they came over on a host program through the church. And they stayed with me for 6 weeks in the summer. And I wanted to see, they were kind of staggered in ages with Joe and Steven, if they would connect and would this work if I were to adopt these kids. And it did. Even though they spoke no English, and none of us spoke Russian, it worked for 6 weeks. Enough to tell that they could hang out together, they could have fun together, it would be okay. They weren't throwing things at each other, so I thought that was a good sign.
How old were they when they came?
So they were 5 and 7 when I met them, and they were 7 and 9 when they came over.
And this was before Kate.
This was before Kate.
Okay.
And so it took 2 years to do their adoption. Well, in the middle of their adoption, when I went over to Russia, I met Kate, my daughter. She was 11, and it took 2 years to do her adoption. And so when she came over, she was 13. And so the kids are all staggered in ages. So Joe's my oldest, and he's 31. And then Stephen and Kate are 29. They're about 6 weeks apart. And then Brett's 26 and Will's 24. So Stephen and Kate are very close in age. So they went to school together.
Yeah, I went to school with Kate too.
And Dalton went to school with Kate. And Stephen reminds Kate all the time that he's the oldest. Always. He always reminds her that he's older than her. But it was great. I mean, the kids all blended together and they all get along and they're all tight.
So what made you say, hey, you know what, I want to
adopt?
Yeah.
So my husband at the time did not have any children of his own. And he wanted children, but I didn't want to physically have any more kids. So I said, well, I would be open to adopting if you want to adopt. He's like, yeah, let's do that. And then this program came up with our church, and I thought, well, that makes sense because then the kids are not so far apart in age. And I didn't want to start with infants when I had kids that were 12 and 10.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why we went with adopting older kids. And they're harder to adopt. And I knew that from being in the family law area for as many years as I've been in it, that, everybody wants the newborns. Everybody wants the babies, 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds. And you see those movies. And it's true. The kids that are in the orphanages, when they get to be older, it's like the likelihood of them being adopted is much harder. And I was like, I just want to do that. I just want to do that. And my daughter would be the one most open to talking about that because she really remembers being there, where Brett and Will sort of remember. Will hardly at all. Brett somewhat, but he doesn't really talk too much about it. But Kate is always like, oh my gosh, Mom, I am so grateful. I am so blessed because had you not adopted me, when I would have turned 18, they just turned them out. Like,
here you go.
Here you go.
You're out
They
in the
give
middle
them a set of clothes basically, and there you go. And they're literally, the girls are out on the street. The boys go into the military in Russia. That's what happens.
And they were in a home in Moscow?
Right outside of Moscow. So it's like they call it a children's home because almost all the kids in there were sibling groups. Kate was not. I don't know why. There was a few in there like her that were not a sibling group, but most of them were sibling groups. And the goal was to try to keep those kids together and place them.
Yeah.
So it'd be like similar to foster care system in the U.S.
I feel like that'd be like the hardest thing ever to go in, like all these kids and be like, hey, you know what? You're all coming with me. Let's roll.
I know. I wanted more. There was this little girl named Lisa, and I wanted her too. She was adorable. And Bruce, my husband at the time, he's like, these are not puppies. We are not coming home with a litter. We're sticking with the ones we've agreed to.
But it's also like when you look at that you look at somebody's life that has, like, that you can change everything about it.
Right.
That I think that would be like the hardest thing that I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't have to drive a nice car. I'd way rather give this person a good life and bring it back home with me. Like, whatever. Like, I feel like I wouldn't have the tough enough skin to go do that.
Yeah. So anyway, so that was kind of cool. And they're great kids, and they've done really well. And Kate served in the Air Force for the U.S., and my younger son, Will, served in the Navy, which I think is pretty interesting that they're, come to the U.S., become U.S. citizens, and then serve.
I think that's very cool.
I know. I think that's super cool.
Yeah.
So I didn't know them when they were younger.
Yeah.
Like, how was the adjustment for them? Just
it was interesting. It's just like, how some people are just good with languages. They're just good with it. My younger son, Will, was great. He picked up the English so fast, but he was 7.
yeah.
And he picked it up really fast. Brett, it took a little bit longer, but part of it's his personality. You know Brett.
Yeah.
He's quiet. He doesn't talk a lot. He's shy. So it took him a little bit longer to, I think, immerse. Kate came over probably knowing the most English, but that's because she knew she was coming.
Oh, she was studying.
And she was studying a lot. Once she knew she was coming, suddenly English became much more important to her. English class became much more important to her. And so when she came over, she knew conversational English. So, there were adjustments in other ways, like the food is very different. So that was different for them. They were used to really bland food. And so they still don't like spicy. The kids don't like a lot of spice because they didn't grow up with that. But
was it because the home life they came from wasn't like that, or like the orphanage they were at? Just
the food in general in Russia is very bland.
I did not know
it's
that.
very bland. Unless you go to really high-end places, which that was not them or where they were, how they lived. And, because a lot of families and homes over there, they don't even have refrigerators. So they go to market every day and buy things. And so they're like a grocery store over there would be the size of a Quick Trip. Like what we think of as a Hy-Vee or a Price Chopper, it'd be a Quick Trip. And so instead of 10 boxes of cereal to choose from, there might be 2. And then there would be like a lot of fresh vegetables. There might be a couple choices on milk. I mean, it's like a Quick Trip, but that was the grocery store. And so anything that was refrigerated was in that store, but then you would take it home and you'd have to use it like soon because there would be most of the time no refrigeration in the homes.
I do feel like
Whole
that's
new
something
culture.
that's like different about, the
Europe
whole
in general.
Yeah, the whole continent over there is like, we went to Spain and like you don't get ice cubes and things.
No,
Yeah, there's
no ice cubes. Everything's tap water. It's room temperature.
Yeah,
It's
the beer.
Yeah.
They sell beer room temperature.
Yes.
I'm like, where's the cold beer at? Like,
no
cold beer.
cold beer.
Yeah.
Like,
Or and
what are you
walking,
talking about?
and you walk everywhere.
Yeah.
So like in Russia, hardly anybody has a car. You're walking everywhere to the store, back. I mean, they'll go to market a couple times a day and walk. And when they came here, and it's like, you drive everywhere. You drive everywhere, and that was unusual for them.
Yeah.
And being in a car and driving everywhere.
just the luxuries of that they didn't even know
Hot
they existed.
water, refrigerators. Well, it was interesting because when I first adopted them, our caseworker said, because I had little closets full of clothes for them and all these little tennis shoes and get them all set up when they come back. And she said, in the beginning, just set out a couple outfits. Let them choose from two outfits. If you give them a closet, they won't know what to do. It's too much.
Overwhelming for them.
It's too much because they didn't even own their own clothes in the orphanage. Nothing they had there was theirs. The only thing that was theirs was their toothbrush, literally. And so that's how we started out, a couple outfits at a time, and then, expand. And then now they have no problem. They're acclimated to America as adults. But yeah, some things like that.
One observation about them, like you said, they're staggered in age. I think this may just be my observation and may not be true, but I feel like Kate, being the oldest, retained the most accent.
Yes.
And then Brett, and then Will,
Yes.
being the youngest.
Yeah,
is the
you're right
least.
about that.
Like, I don't think I can hear any of it in Will, any kind of accent. I haven't spoke to Kate in a long time, but,
Yeah. Every once in a while, you'll hear a tinge of it.
yeah.
You'll hear a tinge of the accent. And Brett, too, a little bit, if he gets, riled up about something.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
had a
yeah.
couple beers. All of a sudden, you hear a little tinge of an accent. And that's funny you say that because Kate used to always say when she would come home from school, she'd get so frustrated. And she goes, I'm so tired of people asking me where I'm from. That really makes me mad. Because she fully wanted to be,
Yeah.
she's American or whatever. And she'd say, that makes me mad when they ask me where I'm from. And I said, well, just tell them you're from Parkville, because that's where I lived at the time. And she just started laughing. She goes, I'm going to say that from now on. So.
Yeah. I know in high school, in middle school, she did.
Yeah.
She still fully, had the accent.
Yes, she did.
Probably not now, but.
Yeah.
I have a good buddy of mine that him and his brother, their whole family came over in the 90s, late 90s, when the war in Croatia was going on.
Oh, yeah.
And he was young enough that he doesn't have an accent. If you met him, you wouldn't know. His older brother, which is
Pretty heavy.
I'm trying to think of how far apart they are.
They don't look that.
I want to say like
different
4
in age.
years apart, but his older brother is like everyone
Heavy
knows.
accent.
Yeah, crazy heavy. And when they got here, the clothes deal, they didn't speak English, and they can't. So Kansas City was actually like a hot spot for a lot of Croatian people coming. And one of their friends from there also came, and I think he came over, and he was maybe like a freshman or sophomore in high school, and they went to Goodwill. That's like where they got all their clothes when they got here.
Right.
And they just picked out anything that fit. They didn't know what was the difference between like men's and women's clothing.
Oh my gosh.
And he goes to like sophomore year of high school, speaks zero English. He's wearing a shirt that says #1 cheerleader. Just because he's like, it fit. Like,
Oh my gosh. That is funny.
And my buddy, he's like, yeah, school. He's like, when we first got here, it was rough. Like,
Yeah.
not speaking English and adapting to it.
I know. I remember that with the kids. We actually hired a guy named Vasily. I don't even know where Vasily is now, but his mom was at Park University, and they were from not Russia, just a country close by. But anyway, he spoke Russian. And we had him come over like 2 or 3 days a week after school just to converse with the kids, because we were, just trying to navigate through what they needed, what they wanted. We're trying to speak English and Russian, and we could not have done that for quite a while without him coming over and talking to the kids.
Yeah.
But, people that I think carry their accents from their countries, a lot of it depends on, they come over as a family, the family comes over, and so at home they're still speaking their native language, and then they're speaking English. I think those people continue to carry their accent longer because they're still speaking their native language, versus like adopting a child and bringing him into your home, and then he's fully immersed into American culture, and they don't ever hear their language again. They lose their accent. They tend to lose their accent more. So, and for Kate, when she was in the Air Force, she didn't tell them for the longest time that she spoke fluent Russian. She never told them that. And then finally she did, and then they wanted her to do some stuff related to Russian translation because she could still read Russian and stuff like that. And she said that what was interesting to her is she hadn't spoken in so long that she was having trouble speaking, but she could understand it.
Yeah.
And she said the more she heard Russian, she could totally understand what they were saying. But she goes, then Mom, she was like, it was mental gymnastics in my mind. I go, okay, now what am I trying to say? Because she wanted to speak English, and the verbiage coming back to her was a little bit harder.
Sure.
Which I think that's just, I'm working on learning a second language right now. And the way that, I don't know how terminology to use on, the way that they put a sentence together isn't even the same.
Yeah, it's not. Not at all. Nouns and the nouns and verbs are switched and all that. Yeah,
everything is all like jumbled up. That if you translate it to English, I'm like, that makes no sense. Like,
right.
If somebody said that, you'd be like, what?
What? I know, right?
So like, no, it's like, it goes this way all the time. So like when you're saying it, I'm like, why?
Right.
That was the same thing with Pedro. We have a custom shop that we work with. We do like social media videos for him.
Okay.
And he does Spanish ones.
Okay.
They're in Independence. And he's like, 90 days same as cash. Like the whole video is Spanish, and he says 90 days same as cash financing. And he's like, I just don't know how to say that in Spanish. It doesn't really translate.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
They'll know.
Well, and I think when you're in the country you're in, and when you're traveling, if you're doing a second language to travel, I think you'll find that when you're in the country, the more you hear the language, you know what they're saying. Because I found that I went to Russia 6 times through this adoption process, and I found that every time I was over there, which was anywhere from 7 to 10 days, the longer I was there, the more I could understand what, like my daughter, I could understand what they were saying, but I didn't know enough Russian to converse very well. I knew enough to tell them, I don't know very much Russian, can you help, And once they felt like I was trying to speak their language, this is what my experience was. I was trying to speak their language. I knew a little bit, enough to try to tell them what I was trying to say. They were very helpful. Like I remember in a store one time, I was in the store trying to find I remember what I was trying to buy. I couldn't find it. this woman came up and asked me in Russian if I needed help, and I was trying to tell her, I don't speak very much English, but this is what I'm looking for. We were kind of going back and forth, and then all of a sudden she goes, she figured out what I was trying to say. She just took my hand and she led me over to where it was in the store, and she pointed it, and she's like, and I was like, yeah, Das, yes, this is what I'm looking for. Thank you. I can't remember what thank you is now, but it was just funny. And I think that's the case when I run into people in the U.S., foreigners that are trying to speak, and I can tell they don't know very much English, and I can try to figure out what they're saying. They're trying to talk to me in English. I'm more willing to go, okay, let me try to figure this out because I want to help you, especially if they're lost or you see somebody in an airport. That's the one that always just like you go, like they're trying to figure out where their gate is, and you're just like, I want to help you.
Yeah.
Like, show me your ticket, and I'm like, oh, it's down here or whatever. Because I
one-
think the panic and sheer terror, you're in an airport in a foreign country, you don't speak the language, and you're trying to figure out where you're going.
And I think a lot of times people come here, and the difference is, like, when we went to Spain, when we were in the airport, a very high percentage of the people speak English.
Yes.
When we went to the hotels, most of the time we found somebody
they spoke.
spoke.
I think they spoke like
Yeah, we went to
at
one of the
least
hotels.
6 languages.
Yeah, the ladies like we
the
speak,
concierge people.
So it was like, it was pretty common to find people that spoke English
Yes.
in those areas. Someone comes here that speaks a different language, it's not like,
We all just go, what?
what?
I know.
You know,
I know.
we also serve the benefit of foreign countries always have like English signs too.
Yeah.
We don't always have like Spanish, French, German,
Right.
Russian signs.
Right.
up
Well, when you're in
everywhere.
Europe, they do speak multiple languages because they have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all.
All the countries are so tight there that it would be unusual if you didn't speak 2 or 3 languages over there. And you're right. We just, Americans, sadly, we're like,
I don't, and Dane and I didn't really give much effort into speaking the Spanish, so
We got the translate apps on our
Yes.
phone. So we literally just speak in our phone, and then they would like say
don't-
it out,
they-
and
they
then they'd be
don't-
like, oh, and then they,
is that the coolest thing ever?
yeah.
I discovered that when Kate came over and we were trying to do translation. At the time, I don't think it was audio though, but you could type it. And we would sit at the computer to try to help her with her homework. And then I found this where I could type and then it would translate to English, Russian, then she could read it. And then she typed, and we were doing this thing back and forth because she was immersed in like 7th or 8th grade.
Yeah.
And it was like they were showing my girl no mercy. It's like, you're here.
Yeah.
You just got to figure it out.
It was-
and she would come home and cry. And then Stephen would try to help her. Then he would get frustrated. And,
she was 13.
She was
came
13.
over.
I think she came in 8th grade.
Think about how much easier that translate app would have helped.
Right.
What I'm saying, by high school, she was like completely fluent.
Oh, she was fluent by the
English.
end of, like, within a matter of months.
Because I really don't remember Kate not
Yeah.
being.
She was fluent
fluent.
within probably 3 or 4
I
months.
I
She
remember
had
the
it
accent, but
down.
I don't remember her.
She had
not-
the accent, but she could speak it.
Yeah, I don't remember her not. I don't remember not being able to communicate with her, ever.
Oh, gosh. I remember. I don't know if I should tell this story or not about the kids, but the boys, when we lived in Wrist Lake, and something happened with one of the kids up the street, and this little kid got mad at them, but he didn't understand that they didn't speak any English. I know something happened. And then the dad came down and said something to me. It was kind of snarky. And I said, look, my boys don't even speak English. I'm not sure what happened up there, but don't be judgy. And they could tell, the boys could tell the dad was angry at me, and he went back up the street, and they lived on the corner. And so then after that, every time we would drive by come around the corner, they would say Dorosh or Darash or something like that. And I'm thinking, okay. And I would just drive by, and they'd look over, and they'd say these words, and I'd go,
I
okay.
don't know what it means, but I'm sure it's funny.
It was then, and then Kate gets here, my daughter, and after she's more fluent in her English, and we're coming by one day, and the kids yell that out, and she goes, Mom, do you know what they're saying? And I go, no, what are they saying? She goes, well, it's not very nice. It's kind of a cuss word. And I go, really? Well, what are they saying? She goes, they're saying asshole. And I go, what? And then I'm like, to the boys, I speak English at the time, but I said, seriously? That's what you guys have been saying this whole time? And they're laughing. They're thinking it's so funny.
Like, Mom doesn't even understand
I
this.
know, and I thought, what are they saying? And I thought, how many other things have been going on? And even between the boys when they would argue with each other in Russian, I'm thinking, they're they're probably doing the verbal smackdown towards each other, and I don't even know what they're saying.
I don't even know who's winning here.
I don't know, right? I don't know who's winning. I don't know what they're saying, but yeah, it was probably not very good. And so then that would come up, and they'd start arguing. And Kate would go, "Mom, do you want to know what they're saying?" I go, "No, not really. No. It adds no value. I don't know. I just tell him to stop.
Just tell him to stop.
Just tell him to stop." So,
yeah, I think it's always cool hearing those stories of people coming over here, and I think it's phenomenal that you did that for them.
thank you.
And
They would say they thought it was phenomenal too. So, and they're great kids. I mean, they're all doing their thing. They've got jobs. They support themselves. You know, it's not like they're on government welfare or anything like that. They're all killing. All of the kids are.
You know, the funny thing is, most of the people that I've met that like have came over here from a foreign country are so thankful for the opportunities that they have.
Yeah.
And then you have American people here that like they think everything's against them and they're a victim 24/7. I'm like,
yes. What's up with that?
Yeah, I'm like, you know, these people come over from nothing.
Right. Literally nothing.
Literally nothing.
Nothing. We had to take clothes over
Yeah.
to change them into to bring them home.
And the sad thing is, it's like our generation.
Yeah, our generation's pretty bad.
Our generation is the one that like they think they're owed something if they get a degree from if they get a piece of paper from a college, and then like they're owed something crazy now.
Yeah.
And you have these foreign people that come over that just outwork them.
Yeah.
And then they want to complain about it. And it's like, man,
Right.
they're getting the same 24 hours we are.
They get an opportunity that they otherwise would not have gotten.
Yeah.
Right.
Where they were. So
I was talking to somebody, I can't remember, the other day about going to Russia and just about what you were talking about how this is, to me, I wouldn't want to live anywhere but the United States. And I remember every time I came back from Russia, even though they were nice to us when we were there, we had translators and guides and everything, I literally wanted to kiss the ground. Literally. When I got off the plane, I was so glad to be back in the United States because the freedom we have here, the opportunities we have here, you're not going to find that anyplace else in the world. No. You don't have that. You know, the right to go to school if you want to choose your job, to decide how many children you want to have. There's countries that control that for you.
Yeah.
Or jobs that women can have that, you know, here a woman can do anything they want. In the U.S., that is not the case in other countries. And it's like, people, why are you complaining about being in this country?
literally.
I don't get it.
It baffles me. It truly does. And I think that's just people opening up their eyes to what's in front of them. Mm-hmm. And I think it's funny how many people here think that the grass is greener on the other side somewhere else.
Well, people think that about marriage, too.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so busy. That's why people always think it's greener. They get in a rough patch in their marriage, and they think the grass is greener on the other side, and I tell them, it is not. You think it is? It's not. It's the same thing. It's just with somebody different.
I can't even imagine the crazy conversations that you've been involved in, probably.
Yeah.
That
Lots.
She was just like, yeah.
Well, it was crazier when I was doing litigation, honestly. I mean, in the mediation world, you know, people that come in are so thoughtful. They really do want to sit down and work things out, and they want to remain on a good vibe with their ex, especially if they have children. Because you're co-parent for the rest of your life. You are co-parenting your kids, even as adults.
Is that becoming more common?
I would like to say it's definitely on the rise. Mediation and collaborative divorce is definitely on the rise. And that's because most people don't want to fight. They don't want to be in that environment, you know?
Correct me if I'm wrong. Are divorce rates rising?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, they are in a sense. No, they aren't, because not as many people are getting married.
Okay.
So I think the percentage is probably consistent as far as people getting married that are divorcing. About 50% of people that get married get divorced. But the divorce numbers probably have flatlined a little bit because so many people are not getting married now. Yeah. I mean, they're cohabitating, they're having children together, but they're not getting married. And so when those people break up, that's not a divorce. Yeah. They're just uncoupling.
It's not a stat.
It's not a stat. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So,
because I feel like there's people, I mean, we know a lot of people we've went to college with that got married and already divorced. Mm-hmm. That it's
the first 7 years are the hardest.
Yeah.
You hear the 7-year itch. There's truth to that. the first 7 years of a marriage are the hardest, primarily because, one, you're trying to, if you haven't lived together, which more people live together now before they get married, that didn't used to happen. So sometimes you can figure out in the first couple of years of your marriage or of living together, do I want to marry this person? And a lot of times you decide in those first years you don't want to marry. But if you get married, then usually the next step is then you're having children. You have 2 or 3 kids. You've got 2 or 3 kids, under 8 years, 6 or 7 years old. It's a grind, especially if you're both working. So you're both working. You're trying to take care of kids. Suddenly there's no time for the marriage because you're focused on these little kids and taking care of them and running them to activities and doing all those things. And then everybody gets worn out and you're thinking, yeah, I didn't think this is what it was going to be. So you start looking, people start looking. Then you think, I like this person over here. Okay, well, this person over here's got kids too. And so now you're going to blend families and think that's going to be better than where you're at.
Holy cow, we just duplicated. Now we got twice as many.
Now you got twice as many kids, and you're navigating 2 sets of parenting plans, another set of It's craziness. It's truly craziness. That's why subsequent marriages are at a higher percentage of failing for those reasons. Because now you've got to integrate other exes and grandparents and trying to blend kids that don't like each other, kids that don't really want to be together.
I think it also confuses kids a lot.
Can confuse kids. Yep.
I think that kids have a lot of confusion nowadays, and I'm just saying from watching from the outside, and I think people should have to almost live together before they get married. Because
I think it's a good idea. You could decide before you get married if it's going to work.
Well,
or you have a high probability of knowing.
Yeah, and I've lived with my fiance. I mean, we've been together for 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time.
Yeah.
But it's we met at 18 years old.
Right.
We started living together in college, and then we bought a house, and we've done everything kind of backwards from the traditional way.
Yeah.
But we live and cohabitate very, very well together.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's got to find their way.
There's some people I'm I know this person, I know that person, and they're they've never lived together, and they're we're going to get married. I'm well, that's not going to go well.
Yeah, right.
And then all of a sudden, 2 years later, they're oh, yeah, we're getting divorced. I'm oh, good.
Well, because there's something to be said for dating. Dating's super fun. You see each other a couple times a week. You're kind of doing your thing on the side, your vibe, whatever your thing is, and you're really happy to see that person when you see them 2 or 3 times a week. Then all of a sudden, you're living 24/7, and it's just
you have no time off.
Wow, this is a lot. This is a lot.
So what would you give as best, what would be your best advice?
Oh. It depends. No, I would say I am a full supporter of living together before you get married. I really am. I just think that is a good first step to assess the relationship and if it's going to work or not. Because a lot comes out in living together that maybe wasn't as evident or present when you're dating. How much somebody drinks, for example. You're out dating, you're out having fun, you're drinking, that's all fun. But maybe you move in with that person, then you're like, oh my God, they drink every day. I thought it was just when we went out. I'm not sure I want to have kids with this person that drinks all the time, as an example. Or, I knew she worked a lot because, she's a lawyer. Yeah. None of my kids are lawyers because they're we do not want to work as hard as you do, Mom. You work you're a crazy person. You work all the time. But no, so somebody has got this great job, nice house, cool cars. You're thinking, oh, I like this guy. Well, the reason he has all that stuff is because he works 70 hours a week, But when you're dating, you're oh, he's so into me and we've got all this time together. But then when you move in, you never see him.
You're oh, all that time I'm getting the same amount of time because all the rest of it was why
you're working, right? So you don't know that unless you're living together. Yeah. And then suddenly you're and that goes both ways. I mean, because a lot of women, I work a lot. Well, that doesn't always work for my partner that I work a lot. Well, if they lived with me, they'd know I work a lot, right? Yep. So I think living together is good. I think that if you're getting married later in life and you are established, you should have some very frank conversations on the front end of what this is going to look like when you get married financially. Prenups are a good thing to do later in life when you're established, I think, especially if you have children. like, let's say it's a second marriage. I think prenups are something definitely to consider because you've done all this work to establish yourself, to create some legacy for your children, and maybe they've got children, and now you're going to get together and you're going to get married. Well, what's that going to look like for you, for your children, for him, her, his children? And have some frank discussions about that. And I think sometimes people don't do that. They don't want to have those discussions because those are difficult ones. Versus doing that on the front end and making sure you align before you get married, instead of getting married and then you start talking about it and you're not completely aligned. Then it's a dicier conversation because then people's feelings are hurt.
A lot more at stake then, too. Mm-hmm. A lot more.
Yeah. So,
what would you say? I feel like, just from what I've seen over a lot of people, is finances tend to be a huge factor.
Finances are a huge factor. And that's one of the biggest causes of the breakdown in marriage is finances. Finances and communication and infidelity. Those are the three biggies for causing divorces.
Because I always kind of thought, like, I've just watched how people run and operate finance-wise, like in marriages. And it's funny because people are normally very vocal about it. And people always are talking about it, things like that. I'm just like I run my life way, way different. Like, if something was to happen, I was like, you know what? We would split something straight down the middle, but we've never had an argument since we've been together about money. And there was a point in college that we had nothing.
Right.
Like, absolutely nothing. With having nothing and then having
a lot.
all of it.
Yeah.
It's just, I trust her and she trusts me that we're not going to do anything stupid with our money. We've always ran it jointly and it's just never been an issue. And then it's like, talk to so many other people and individuals that you see them arguing, you see these problems that they've created, and so much of it stems from finances.
Yes.
But
probably with you and your fiance, though, you guys started out very young together, so you've grown together, right?
Yeah, we talk about we're a team on everything.
Yeah, and you guys have grown up together.
Yeah.
And so you've learned how you want to do things along the way as things have grown for you financially, which is different than a couple getting together and, they're 25, 26, they have their jobs, they've been living independently. Now they're blending and doing things together, and the way they do their finances may be very different. And now they're trying to blend it, and that's where there's sometimes conflict. Because one person might be, I'm a cash-only person. If I can't pay for it, I'm not getting it, and maybe that's the way they were raised. And then the other person is, I just put everything on credit card, I'll figure it out later. Well, you put those two people together? And it's like, well, what are we doing here? And one person comes home and something's being delivered to the house, and they put it on a credit card, and the cash person's going, well, how did you pay for that? I put it on a credit card. Really? Well, you have credit cards? Well, what are your balance? How do you do that? And sometimes they've never really talked about that, even before they get married. Or when they're married.
That
I have
sounds
a lot of
crazy
divorce. No, I'm telling you, I've had divorce
yeah.
cases where they don't even know when they're getting divorced exactly what's going on financially with the other person, because they've kept separate bank accounts, they have separate credit cards, they do things jointly, like they might have a joint bank account that they fund to pay like their shared expenses, but what they're doing independently, they have no idea. And then they get ready to divorce, and all of a sudden, it's like, I've had conversations where somebody's like, what, do I have to disclose all my credit card debt? And I'm like, yeah. Is that going to be a problem? Well, he doesn't know. He thinks I have 2 cards, but I really have 6. And
boy.
I'm like, I'm not kidding you.
Which I feel like I don't know. I don't know what people spend money on, so I guess.
All kinds of stuff.
But
Amazon is a lot of people's really good friend.
It is. But it's like, okay, so if somebody has an Amazon buying problem, like, how does the other person miss it?
Because it's delivered to the office.
Yeah.
And then you, like, put you put the outfit on and wear it home like you've already had it. Or you.
That's pretty sneaky.
Oh, there's all kinds of sneaky stuff. You go to the... I know all kinds of stuff. I don't do it, but I know all kinds of sneaky stuff.
You probably know stuff about people that we wouldn't even
Well,
imagine.
like you go to the grocery store and you check out and you pull out cash when you check out.
Oh, yeah.
How does the spouse know that? And then you're stashing that cash? How would they ever know? Because you're putting it, Well, you used to write a check. Now you pay with a debit card or whatever, but you do a cash pullout. How does anybody know you did that? Nobody.
I don't know. Like,
You're dumbfounded. I have you speechless.
I really am like,
my
sitting there
job
like,
is complete. I have you speechless.
This is all news to me too. I'm like,
whoa, yeah.
like,
there's all kinds of stuff. There is all kinds of things that if you don't want to be transparent with your partner financially, there's a lot of things.
I mean, I'm always one to. I always like to give people the benefit of the doubt. You know.
Yeah. Well,
not think like.
Right.
The worst.
How to be sketch?
Yeah,
how can I be sketch? Yeah. No, that's not how your marriage should. Your marriage should never be that way.
But I think it's crazy
it
where
is that way sometimes for people.
Yeah.
Like my fiance Mass and I, we both work really, really hard. Mm-hmm. So anything she wants to buy, and she does very well financially, and we both have, and it's like, I'm never the one to say no.
Right.
Do I agree with like the amount of money she spends on some stuff? Absolutely not. I'm like, I think that's the dumbest shit ever. Like, some of the things she buys, but she says the same thing about stuff I buy.
Yeah, but you guys are good with that with each other.
Which it's like, but I've never went to buy something and her even look at me or question me or anything, no matter what the price tag is.
Okay, and that's unusual. I'll just say.
But it's
that's an unusual thing.
But it's the same thing with her. Like, because we both work, we both have the respect for each other on a financial level. Like, we know that we're not making bad purchases. Like, I buy all of our cars. I know the car space. And then, like, one day I came home, I was like, hey, I bought a new Polaris Ranger 1060 and everything. We live in a neighborhood. She's like, why? I'm like, it was a deal.
It was a deal.
And she's like,
couldn't pass it up.
She's like, okay, if it was a deal. And, like, she just doesn't say anything. Like, she was fine with it. And but she's spent money on, like, purses. Like, I don't get the purse thing, and she spends, but we both do something where we set goals of, like, that's when we get that item. That's when we get that item, and it pushes us into finances. But it's just, I respect her on what she does. She respects me on what I do, and we've never had even a question on it. But we've also never leveraged ourselves into things that are too big. Like,
that's where people get in trouble, and that's just trying to keep up. You know, you're trying to keep up, and I think there's a lot of pressure to do that when you're younger, like when you're getting out of college and everybody's getting their jobs and you're buying a new car, and you know they just bought a house, so we need to buy a house, and they just went to Cabo, we need to go to Cabo, and it's all this keeping up that I think gets couples in trouble when they're younger. When you're older, you're like, you know, whatever. I'm not trying to match that. I'm personally trying to save my money so I can retire. I don't need to go to Europe for 3 weeks. You know, everybody's different.
Yeah,
so.
And that's like I said. I think everyone has a different financial strategy that works for them.
Well, it's how you're raised too.
Yeah.
You know, it's how you're raised. My sister and I are both very conservative because I don't want to live in a tent. I will probably never live in a tent. But my mindset is still, by the way I was raised, that I might end up living in a tent. And so I'm very conservative about my spending. I'm more into investing and saving because I think
Steven is very conservative too.
Oh my God, son was Steven and
that
Joe.
From you and Matt.
They squeak. They're so tight.
Yeah.
We say they squeak. My older son too. They squeak. Brett, Will, and Kate, they're spenders.
Yeah,
they're spenders, and that's just interesting. Because they have more now than they've ever had growing up. My younger three, so they're spenders.
So I think when they figure out that they can do it, and this is something where I have changed the way that my fiance thinks, because she wasn't a spender. Like when we met each other, like she never bought a car with all the options. It was like base as they come. Like she's like that's how her family was.
Yeah.
And then she meets us. I'm like, you buy everything as loaded as it possibly comes. I'm like, life is short. I'm going to have a sunroof. I'm going to have navigation. I want massaging seats. I want heated and cooled seats. I'm like, life is short. I'll die tomorrow, but at least I had massaging seats before I went out. And it's like, that's the way like we've been, but I've always believed in myself where it's like I can do anything I want. Like I bet on myself every single day of the week. And as I started integrating that into her, I was like, we can save a lot and we can still make a lot and save and spend.
Yeah.
Like you could
there should be a good balance.
I go, we don't have to spend everything.
Right.
But spend it on the luxuries and like.
I spend it on horses.
Yeah. Cheap hobby.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because I'll look and go, do I really need that pair of shoes? I don't know. Do I need that purse? Oh, my horse needs this super expensive supplement to be comfortable. I'm going to go buy that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
That's just me. I mean, if it comes to the horses, I don't think anything, it's crazy, but they're also a business. So they're, they do make income for me and stuff. But so Now that we're talking about spending, I don't really bat an eye when it comes to my horses. But for me personally, I go, do I really need that? Is it a yes or a no? I'm not sure.
When it comes to business or personal, like I run them in two completely different like in business, it's like, hey, we need a computer. All right, here's a card. Go buy a $3,000 computer today. Don't even think twice about it. And then it's like I'm putting stuff in my Amazon cart. And I'm like, do I really need to spend $28?
I know. I've never thought about it till now that we're talking about it, and that has never occurred to me that I do think very differently about business spending and my horses, which are a business, and me personally. I do the very I've never even thought about it, but I do the very same thing.
Business is just like,
it's
no problem.
done.
Don't even think about it.
Need it, done.
Right.
Oh, you need paralegal, you need this? Absolutely. Here's my card. Get what you need.
Yeah.
I want you to be happy.
Now I'm like looking at a pair of Hey Dudes that are $59 on Amazon. I'm like, I don't really need
I don't
it.
think I need that.
I'm like,
right?
So I have a cardinal rule now on my Amazon is I put it in my cart, but I have to wait 3 days to check out.
Oh.
Most of the time I go back in like 3 days. I'm like, I totally forgot I even want that. Delete.
Yeah, I don't even think that.
I don't even think I need that anymore.
I tell clients about that when they want to respond back to their spouse, 24-hour, or ex-spouse, 24-hour rule. They send you an email. I want you to wait 24 hours, and this is more when I did litigation. I want you to wait 24 hours before you respond, because how you respond in 24 hours is probably going to be kinder and more thoughtful than if you respond instantaneously. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Wait 24, and then same thing. Half the time they call there and go, yeah, I don't even care about that now. I've thought about it overnight. I don't even care. I'm going to say yes. Great. Say yes. You know, like changing parenting time around, or
At that point, they're like,
something.
I want the coffee table. Absolutely not. He's not getting the coffee table.
Yeah.
We're cutting it in half.
Right. And the next day you're like,
I don't even like the coffee
I
table.
don't even like that damn coffee table. He can have it. And the coasters that are on top of it. And the plant. He can have it all. So, yeah, same thing. I like the Amazon cart rule. I might.
Yeah,
It
that was a good move for you, because he used to have an Amazon problem.
I did. So,
Oh, you did?
So, like,
was there an intervention? Because did all the packages come here?
No, so it's when we were working out of the basement.
Oh.
They all came to his house.
So because we work with social media and we're on there all the time, when I'm done at work, I don't scroll on social media.
Yeah.
So like Madison would get on her phone, and like now we have a rule where we just put our phones up.
I like that rule.
But there for a while, like we'd be on our phones at night or something, and I didn't want to be on social media, so I just scroll Amazon. Terrible idea.
Yes, because there's so much on there that you
I know.
can buy.
And I just click buy now, and then like scroll on buy now, and then it's like I didn't even add it all to the cart to try to like they're like you get fewer packages. I'm like I don't really care how many packages show up.
Yeah, we would.
Tuesday combines all your packages if you get them on Tuesday.
I would show up in the morning to their house, and there's like 18 Amazon packages. I'm like, oh.
You're like, he's got a problem.
I'm like
We need to do
shoveling them in the front door.
Yeah.
We need to do an intervention.
And
Yeah.
Madison all the time, she was like, "Do you need that?" I was like, "Oh,
Well, I thought I did at the moment.
yeah." I don't even. Most of the time, like probably 10 out of 10 times, they would all show up, and I couldn't tell you what I ordered.
I know. I do that. I order quite a bit from Amazon too, and I just have it delivered to the office. And same thing, like something came today, and I'm like, what is this? And I open it, and I go, oh yeah, I totally forgot I ordered that.
It's almost like Christmas for
forgot.
yourself all the time.
I know, right?
And they've already packaged them up for you. They're wrapped. And
Yep.
it's like,
Yep.
yeah. So that was my 3-day rule is actually, I would say cut my Amazon down to probably less than 5%.
I'd stick to that rule.
Yeah,
good.
that's a good idea. I don't think I'm going to do that with my horses, though. I order through Amazon for them. They get what they need.
So I order stuff for work, and if I need something for work, I'll get on there and just click buy now, roll. Don't even think about it. But if I put if it is a personal item,
goes in a 3-day hold
so
cart.
now I have this thing where I kind of try to push thing into business. I'm like, do I want to buy this? I'm like, it would look good in the office.
Can we set it in the office somewhere and then I'll take it home later?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I did last week. I have a black and gold $100 bill rug upstairs that it got me.
Well, see, you could do
I
that.
don't think I've seen that.
See, that's kind of some of the things. Kind of, you could bring it to the office first. You know, let it be here for a while, and then you just bring it home. And Madison's like, "Oh, what is that? We had it at the office. I was kind of getting tired of it. I thought I'd just bring it home. Maybe we could find a place for it here."
Probably anything.
Hopefully, Madison's not listening right now.
Oh, she definitely is. And she would tell you if she was here also that no decor I've picked here would be going into our house.
Ah, there you go.
So
I like your
I think
decor
that
here.
is a rule.
Thank you.
I like your bourbon and whiskey bottles and the fact that they have alcohol in them.
Yeah, that's
I like that. And your lantern. You guys have some cool.
There's some antiques in here.
And I love that lamp that's out there. That's the parts lamp. That is really cool.
Yeah,
There's
a couple of those around here.
I like
You'll
that.
have to check them all out.
I'm going to. I've been looking at that lamp. Did you buy that or somebody made it?
I bought, so I can't give out my full secret, but I buy antiques that I have a rule that when I buy stuff, I buy the heaviest stuff I can possibly buy. If it's really heavy, I feel like it's worth more.
Yeah.
So like that lamp
It's
weighs
heavy?
a ton. And I have another one.
Yeah, that's really cool. I
that-
like that a lot.
So Madison has a very much lighter vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I like the vibe of
Yours is
Like-
more farmy,
Rustic-ish.
rustic.
yeah. Anything that's metal.
Modern farmhouse is kind of your vibe, I think. I like it.
I think
Is she more
It
contemporary?
suits us here.
yeah, she would like contemporary, and it's like our house is very like bright, and it's everyone's always blown away. Like it looks like it's ready for like staging to have photos done tomorrow every single day.
That's the look I like too.
Yeah,
I like the more contemporary, clean line, minimalistic, not a lot of stuff sitting around.
No.
I like that.
so I like the two differences. Where
Yeah, but I like them both. I just like the other look for my house.
so now
but-
I can buy stuff, and I'm like, hey, it doesn't have to go to the house; it can go to the office.
Yeah, I like that.
So
No, I do. I love your office. I love your decor a lot.
thank you very much.
Yeah, it's really cool. So
Well, I think we touched on law firm, touched on the kids, touched on the horse farm.
poor Dalton, he's still thinking about it.
He's still traumatized.
His childhood, child labor.
At the end of each podcast, when we're wrapping up, one of our final questions is if you could go back to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell yourself? Something that you know now that you would go tell your 20-year-old self.
I shouldn't have been so serious.
Not so
Not
serious?
so serious. Yeah, I was really when I was in college. I was really focused on getting good grades because I wanted. At the time, I thought I wanted to go to medical school, and I ended up as a lawyer. And I could have had more fun. I think I could have had a better balance in college when I was in my 20s. But I was really
I was on the other side of the spectrum. I was having too
hyper-focused.
much fun.
I know, right? I think I could have had a better balance. And that's what I've told my kids, do whatever. Take advantage of doing what you're doing now. Only Stephen's the only one married. He got married very young, but the others 4. I'm like, take advantage of not having any kids right now. Travel, go do fun things, because at the point that you settle down, you have a family, you have children, you're much more restricted in what you can do as far as traveling. I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have gone away to school. I went to Mizzou, and my dad said, go away, go to the East Coast, go to the West Coast, go somewhere and live outside of the Midwest. If you want to come home, you can always come home. And I'm like, I want to go where all my friends are going, and they're all going to Mizzou. And so I've never lived anywhere but the Midwest. And I wish I would have traveled more.
So you went to Mizzou before UMKC, before you went to law
I
school.
went to Mizzou for college, and then I went to UMKC for law school.
Didn't know that about you.
There you go. So I wish I would have traveled more.
Yeah. That's
And just explored more when I could, because you can't, and then now that I'm licensed in Missouri and Kansas, for me to move out of state, I'd have to get another bar. It's like I'm very restricted to where I can go.
yeah.
So,
But I very much like that.
yeah.
And very much appreciate you coming on the podcast.
I'm so glad you asked me to come on the podcast.
This worked out
so
perfect.
fun.
I loved
know,
having you on.
right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Dalton.
I've known you for over 15 years.
I know. Dalton
I
and I
feel
go
like-
way back. I could be his mother. I
Yeah.
feel like I've been his mother a few times.
I feel like I know you way more now.
You do,
Than
really.
just, I mean, I've never we've never sat down for an hour and a half.
No,
and
we
had a
have not.
conversation.
Usually I'm just telling you to slow down driving up my driveway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
We actually
right.
came here for an intervention on Dalton's
I need
speed.
to
I know,
stop
right?
running over
When
the
he
potholes
goes,
so fast.
I didn't see the horses out. I'm like, that's because they were a blur. You were driving so fast up my driveway. You didn't see the horses.
That's my B.
Yeah.
I'll remember next time.
I know. You better.
It had been a while, in my defense, since I'd been there. So
It had been. In
No,
fact, I'd asked Stephen if you'd been over recently.
wow.
I know. That's why I didn't recognize your truck. Now I know it.
Yeah.
I go, here he comes.
There's
blue
no
blur.
hide. There's
I know
no
the
hiding
blue
it
blur.
now.
Right.
The
That's
big
right.
blue blur.
No, this has been so fun. It really has. It's been a blast talking to you guys.
Once again, thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
And I'm glad that Stephen reached out to set this all up.
Me too.
So
Me too.
I think that is going to bring the podcast to an end, and I'm going to key Ricky.
Thanks for listening to the M3 Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Want to learn more? Check us out on Instagram at Moss Marketing Group, on Facebook at Moss Marketing 58, or on our website at mossmarketinggroup.com.